thank you for joining us. Santiago presented us with a challenge right from the very beginning, because when we wanted to do a summary of his just his legal life, his bio and his achievements are so long that we struggled in how to sort of summarize it and pull it together. Not only has he had an illustrious legal career and now setting up and leading the Santiago Mediano firm in Madrid, but he speaks 5 languages, he's learning Chinese, he is a professor at universities in Madrid, so he teaches, and he also fences. And when I read that, I initially thought, maybe this is some sort of metaphor, or this is his technique for dealing with opposing counsel. But it turns out to be absolutely true. So I'm actually going to start right there and then move on to the official business of the day and say, so Santiago, when did fencing? I know Spain has a great tradition of the swordsman, but when did fencing come into your life? And also, what have you learnt from fencing that has helped you in your legal career?
I believe I wanted to practice fencing since I was a child, but I actually started back in 2000. That was a moment when I really confronted my personal life with working, and I decided I had to save time for myself. And I had to take care not only about work, but also about my body, my mind, and my soul. So fencing became, to me, the most appropriate choice, because perhaps you know that, some of you, if you have tried fencing, fencing is quite a mental sport, not a physical one. And fencing, when you're in the middle of what we call an assault, you can only concentrate on what you are really doing, but you have to really pay attention to what your adversary is doing. You cannot think about anything else but trying to get to know that person, trying to learn from that person's reactions to your movements, and trying to somehow make that person commit a mistake that you can profit from. So if you are very strong, that will not make you a better fencer. If you are very quick, that is an advantage, but that is not enough. You must really focus on what you're doing and focus on what the adversary is doing. So I must say I have learned lots of things by fencing that I apply every day in my profession.
I was going to say, it's almost an allegory for being a lawyer.
It is, certainly. You know what? It is funny that you bring that here, Keith, because fencing has lots of things in common with playing chess. Chess is supposedly a game where luck and luck is absolutely out of question. Whatever happens on the board is not the result of any random process. It's the result of your own choices, of your own decisions. And chess is a game where both players start from a situation of total balance. No one has any advantage. Eventually, the one who plays the white pieces has a little advantage because it has initiative. They have the initiative. They play first. They move first, but it's as small as that. And you have to take your decisions. You have to make your moves in a way that you try to create small imbalances in your favor. And also chess teaches great lessons about space and time. So it is not the same to move a piece before the other. Whatever you do first and you do second and you do third is absolutely relevant. And at the very end, it proves that tiny decisions, tiny moves, tiny advantages you may be creating on the board, they play an absolutely relevant role at the end of the game. So these, I mean, chess and fencing are things that you can profit from, and you do not also only apply that to your work, you apply that to your personal life, and thereby you also keep yourself, I would say, a little fit and keep yourself healthier, which is something that is to me very important if you really, if you want to have a productive and healthy life together with your work.
So you would advise that all lawyers, and particularly up and coming lawyers, play chess?
Yeah, certainly. And I would say more. I would advise that the chess is taught at schools to children. I think chess is really something that you can profit from every time in your life, and has great advantages if you use it as a tool. And chess is also a tool where you can get to know yourself better, and where you can get to know others better. So it's a self-knowledge tool too. And I would really recommend chess to everyone.
So Meryl, we're taking a note that we're going to have a Mackrell International golf tournament at the next AGM, but we also may have a chess tournament. Although note to self, do not play Santiago in the chess tournament.
I'm a very bad player, though, I'm afraid. I mean, playing chess is something great. Winning must be even better.
Okay, in that case, note to self, do play Santiago in the chess tournament. Santiago, you talk, I mean, we started this conversation somewhere in the middle, and we're talking about work-life balance, but I'm interested that you said you've always wanted to do fencing, but you only took it up in 2000, which is, you know, a fair time ago. Why did it take that time for you to start chess? And I guess what I'm leading to is, one of the things that comes up when we have these discussions is the challenges on up and coming lawyers in terms of workload, expectation, some of which I think is probably inherent in the profession and a lot of young lawyers put upon themselves, and some of which is the profession saying, in order to rise up, you need to have proven yourself, and some of that is equated to sort of huge caseloads, a vast amount of work and commitment. Some of that comes with, you know, some of that comes with being a lawyer, but I just wonder how much of that was the point at which you felt you were strong enough in yourself to say, I am going to make some decisions for me, and or was it other factors?
No, it was exactly that. I became a member of the Madrid bar back in 1991. So the first years after I finished school and I became a lawyer in Madrid, I really worked as hard as possible. I remember even sometimes, this is an anecdote, but I wanted to go on holidays with my family. And you know, it was Easter, so in Spain we have some days in a row, some holidays in a row during Easter, and we profit because it's springtime, and so you go to the coast or you go up to the hills, whatever you like. And I wanted that to happen. And in order for that to be possible, I had to work 36 hours in a row, 2 nights over, and that was that was a moment when I realized that was unfair, and that was a clear imbalance in my life. I used to work at that time for a very, very big US firm, and so I decided that was not correct. And the saying there was, you work this hard until you are 45, and then at 45 you retire and you're rich. Mm-hmm. And that was eventually true. But then I thought, well, you retire, but you can't do anything but working. There is nothing else you know how to do. You only know how to work, and what is that for a life? So that was when I also decided I wanted to change, not just in my in the way I worked, but even where I worked. So that was really the starting point to go to make a certainly a downshift, and that was the starting point for our small mid-sized firm in Madrid, where I really chose the persons I wanted to work with. We created a very strong bond, and we remained together. And if nothing comes, really no catastrophe happens, we will be together until we really quit from working. So yes, this is something I wanted to stress, how important it is to keep a healthily balance between working and your personal life and personal relations, family, but also with yourself. I mean, how you must care for yourself. You must have time for yourself, for things you love, and to develop a life where you can call yourself not only a lawyer, but a person. Some time ago, one of my partners was asked about how many we were at Santiago Mediano Abogados, and certainly in an automatic way, he said, we are 43 lawyers and 9 persons. And so I said, this is funny, because what are the 43 lawyers? Aren't we persons? So yes, I mean, being a lawyer is quite a great thing, and I'm so thankful, and I would not choose any other profession. I love it, but it is as much as important being to be a person, and to be a person means to me that you have to have space for other things than that. That is not only to work. No, I don't know what happens to the rest of you, but it is very easy to me that when I stop working, I continue thinking about work, and this isn't good. This isn't good. There must a moment in the day must arrive where you really have to stop. And to stop means to stop even thinking about the problems that you're handling, the cases that you're handling, or how you will get the next client to come on board. So yes, this is a lesson that I really felt I started to be profiting from. At the same time, I started fencing.
There's a lot of things I want to unpack here. I want to talk about the Santiago Mediano Abogados and the culture you've built in the firm. And I want to ask everybody who's on the call, just pop into the chat for me, please. What is it? What is your fencing or your chess? What is it you do that to be a person as well as a lawyer? We know from Sarah at the beginning that's sort of hair dye and running. But sort of pop into the chat what you do, and as we go along, if there are any questions you want me to put to Santiago, if you want them sort of open and available, then please just pop them in the chat. If you'd like me to ask them anonymously, just send them to me directly. Santiago, you say that one of the drivers for setting up and building Santiago Mediano Abogados was to get away from this sort of high pressure American style law firms, which have a certain reputation in the industry anyway. And yet I would challenge you in that trying to get hold of you is really difficult, because you are one of the hardest working people I know. So what's changed then between when you were is it, and without putting words into it, before you were being driven to it and now you are driving yourself?
Part of it, certainly. And I think I have a very direct answer to your question, Keith. We have, at our firm, we have put the persons in the center of what we do. People is, I mean, it's, I would say our leitmotif is people. People go first. And people means lawyers, people means partners, people means co-workers, people means clients. So persons is goes really first, and in that it means that we are in a constant tension to make our professional life conditions better every day. We are constantly trying to improve the way we help clients, and the emphasis goes on everyone that's in the firm developing the career they really like, pointing to the challenges that they really want to assume, and not leaving anybody behind. The pandemics have proven that to be really a challenge to achieve that goal. We have introduced many changes in the way we work. We are about to finish the reworking of the offices that we have in Madrid, to make it possible for everyone to balance the time they want to work from home with the balance they want to work at the office. We even hired specialized consultants in order to provide us with professional advice on how to make that possible, how to really bring that to action and to make that become facts, not just words. And we set up several working teams. For instance, Beatriz here participated in one of these teams, and the definition of what this had to mean in practice in our office is the result of the thinking and of the efforts of a team of persons, where I must say no partner was taking part. So how we are going to work from now on is the result of the work of a team of associates, that they are proposing a new model to the firm, and we are implementing that. Also, not to leave anybody behind has meant to take care about our colleagues' mental needs. At the very first moment, we were very much worried about health issues in relation to COVID-19. But then we realized that mental health was also at stake, and that we had to care about emotions, about concerns, and about needs that went far beyond from just not get the COVID-19 disease. And we could really, you could see people having hard times just because there was no personal contact beyond screens. We had to find a way where younger people could benefit from working together with older people, at the same time keeping health as a requirement to go ahead, at the same time to preserve everybody's mental health too. So it has been quite a challenge.
So let's talk a little bit about this challenge then, because you started off, we had Global Managing Partner Forum early in the week, and Roberto from Italy was on that, talking about the way that he has a sort of also a sort of very different law firm model. And one of the ways that he, I suppose, encourages all his team, but also his young lawyers, is they have a sort of hub and spoke system. I'll bring Roberto in towards the end. And so lawyers are developing different skills, and very much working in a hybrid way. But Santiago, you talked about, in fact, you two should probably have a chat after this call. Santiago, you talked about the initial challenge when COVID hit, of people being stuck on a screen, as we are still, and yet you, and driven by associates like Beatriz, you've then moved into a largely sort of cloud-based virtual structure.
Yeah.
So rather than doing the traditional law firm thing, which is like, let's pull everybody together, you've said, well, we're going to pull everybody together differently.
Correct.
But we are going to stay flexible and virtual. Correct. What were the challenges in making, and are the challenges in making that work?
Well, there were certainly a few. The first one was creating, I would call it a virtual law firm. Virtual law firm means that everybody could use the same resources out of the office as they can use when they're in the office. That required a relevant investment and substantial amounts of money to provide everyone with a high-profile computer they could bring everywhere, not too heavy to carry. We had to make sure that all our files, all the information we used in our daily work, were available to everyone wherever they were, irrespective of the moment of the day or the place they were working from. We also set up a regular Teams meetings, and we used also Zoom channels through WhatsApp, and also the tools that we use, our database, legal databases, information, books, case law documents, everything had to be available to everyone. Everyone had to have at their disposal the same resources when they were working from home as they had when working at the office. So technology was really a matter. We hired also consultants, but we brought on board an engineer, a top-class engineer, who helped us with this process. And it's amazing. I mean, we were really lucky because we had started this process before the pandemics showed up, and we only had to speed it up. And the same, I mean, the day after the lockdown started, everybody was connected, but it was only, I mean, it was, we were caught in the middle of the process, which has ended some months later. Today, if, I don't know, a fire broke in our offices, we would continue working regularly. But at the same time, we very soon found out that this was not enough, that just relating with each other using technology is not enough, and that people, especially younger people, started to complain because they said that the quality of what they experienced of working with us was not the same. What they learned was not the same. So we have put lots of attention also to that, because as I said before, we always try to put people at the center of what we do. We try to care for everyone, not just the partners, everybody who has whatever need. We really try to be there to solve it and to help them. And this is also a way we handle client matters.
So how do you said you used the phrase putting people at the heart of Santiago Mediano, and you said, obviously, you've talked about your team, but also clients. Clients are notoriously erratic, fickle, demanding, because they're human beings. And the legal profession has also created an expectation that your lawyer is available to you 24/7. So how do you manage that balance between putting the client people at the heart of the organization with the lawyer people that you have in Santiago Mediano?
Well,
I can see Beatrice smiling.
we have clear ideas about that, Keith, and it's so good that you ask. We call it client education. We try to under promise, over perform. We educate clients, and we say, I will do this in this time frame, and I am available during this time, but I will not be available after this hour or these days. So we try to be very honest and clear with them. We try to help them manage their expectations. And I can say this is a success. I personally, I've been working with some clients who have followed me throughout my career. I worked in this US firm, I worked in another firm before we founded Santiago Mediano Abogados. I'm not talking about individuals or small companies. There are very big companies that I've been working for decades, like Warner Brothers or Universal, or formerly Yahoo before it disappeared. I am probably the oldest member of the team at Warner Brothers in Spain today, and I have seen those with whom I've worked for many years retiring. So I have become the gray man, the gray-haired person in Madrid for some of these companies. And even, for instance, at another very big client, Disney, I have taught some of their in-house counsel, or large record or publishing companies, some of the in-house lawyers, they were my students at school. So yes, when you're clear, when you're honest, when you keep your promises, and you do not overpromise, then you can do this.
Well, I guess it's also quite handy that you're good with a sword, because nobody wants to mess. If one of the things that we had a litigation practice group meeting the other day, this is relevant, and it was fascinating. We had a really interesting blend of younger lawyers and older lawyers, more experienced lawyers. And one of the discussions that came up was about the mistakes that the older litigators had made when they were younger about saying yes to any client. And because you're still building your reputation, you're in a scenario where the law firm expects a certain, you're targeted if nothing else, but even if you're not targeted, there's an expectation that you'll bring in a certain amount of business. And perhaps you don't even have the emotional or the mental maturity to be able to recognize whether a client is going to be inherently difficult I think the technical term may be an asshole. That's a legal term. I think it's in the definition somewhere. But and until you've taken on a couple of these clients, by the time it comes to the third client, that I can see Roberta nodding, that's the point where you go, do you know what? I have a sense about this person, and almost no money in the world is worth taking on this client because of the repercussions. Okay. And we had a discussion amongst the group to say, well, so here's a piece of fantastic advice. Be very smart and judicious about the clients you take on.
Yes.
And however, do you think you can actually do that as a young lawyer, even with all the wisdom you're imparting about make sure you have a good work-life balance, make sure you are smart about the clients you take on? Can you really, as an up-and-coming lawyer, go, hey, boss, I'm not going to take that client on because I have a sense that they're going to be difficult? Or is it just one of those things that actually is part of the legal professional journey?
To me, the correct answer is the second, Keith. I believe how to deal with clients and how to recognize, how to even make a forecast of what the relation will be and how it will develop comes from practice and experience. I like this anecdote where a lawyer was asked to tell how that lawyer became a very successful one. And this person answered, well, by taking the right decisions. Oh, that's interesting. So tell us, how do you take the right decisions? Well, taking the right decisions, you learn that through experience. Oh, that's good. And how do you gain experience? Well, you gain experience by taking wrong decisions. So in order to take the right decisions, you probably must have taken wrong decisions before and then really experience what it means. And I fully agree with you. There are clients and there are cases that it's really not worth taking. And this is probably, you develop an instinct. This is something I mean, if there is a person who can say, I was born with that, I want to know that person. Because I think this is something you develop throughout time. And this brings me to another topic I'd like to share with you, which is leadership. To me, it's very different. To be a lawyer in a firm is very different from to be a lawyer in a company, for instance. I was a member of an in-house counsel to the Spanish Authors and Publishers Society long ago, before joining this US firm. And I remember I was very young. I think I was 25, 26, 27. I remember when I quit to go to private practice, the general manager of this society called me to his office and told me, Santiago, I congratulate you because you've been hired by this firm. This is so good. And your life will be changing so much. And I said, well, listen, I will be practicing the same. I will be doing the same intellectual property, technology, copyright issues, litigation, this and that. I said, oh, no, I know that's what you will be doing because that's your specialization. I'm talking about something different. And I asked, what is it? And he said, well, here as an in-house counsel, you have only one client, which may be boring. At the same time, that client is guaranteed to you. You don't need to sell your services. But now you go to private practice, you will be a lawyer, but you also will run your own personal business because you have to sell your services and you have to convince people that they have to hire you, that they want to hire you. So that's two works. You have two jobs. You're a salesman, you're a lawyer. And this will be, I mean, this will introduce a huge change. And I have to say that proved to be absolutely true. When you work in a firm, you are not just a lawyer. You must be something different. So when you're very young as a lawyer, you should expect all the lawyers to lead you. And something I regret I have done wrong is tried and successfully tried to run too fast. I wanted to become a great lawyer and an important person, an important lawyer, very fast. So I burned, I burned the candle up and down. So I really tried to work very hard, tried to get big clients, big cases, work lots of hours, make lots of money. And I was too stubborn and not, I had not enough humility in order to allow older people really teach me and lead me. And sometimes that combined with older lawyers not really knowing what to lead younger lawyers means. And when you're starting a profession, you have to know that what can be expected from you is at the very beginning, your work needs supervision. Everything you do needs to be supervised. And if you do not get that supervision, that is unfair, because you take on responsibilities that you should not. You can be held responsible for mistakes or wrong decisions, and you should not. There must be someone with larger experience and not necessarily technical knowledge, simply larger experience telling you this is the right path, this is the wrong path, go this way, try that, you better don't do this. And this is something that I recommend to everyone to follow the lead of a more experienced person. There is a second moment when you start to take responsibilities, and that is good, because if you are not allowed, if you're not exposed to the possibility of taking wrong decisions, you will never learn. But this needs to be made in a smooth way. You have to be introduced smoothly to taking your own decisions, to eventually making your own mistakes. And then with the time, you get to do work with no supervision. You can take a case, you can take a project from the very beginning to its very end without your work be supervised. And that's then you have matured. If that moment arrives, then you're a mature lawyer. And the third phase to me is when you can do the same with other people, when you become the leader, when you become the one who can tell the rest. You can tell stories of what happened to you in a similar situation, and these stories are true. You did not invent them. I don't know. I remember when I was young, there was the counterpart in a case told me, "I'm going to suicide if you succeed in this case." At the very first moment, I was scared because I thought I could be morally guilty for somebody committing suicide because I did my job the right way. And I did it though, and that person never killed himself. But there was another anecdote, and I can tell you who it was. It was a very reputed theater writer called William Layton. You may have heard of. William Layton lived in Madrid. He got to know Federico Garcia Lorca, who is a very, very famous Spanish poet and theater writer. That he was gay and was killed because he was gay, and he was politically oriented to the left. And so 1936, during the start of the Spanish Civil War, he was killed by the troops. Not in a fight, he was simply kidnapped and killed. That was it, sadly. And this William Layton, he was deaf, so he came to my office every week, and he wanted me to help him putting things in order about his copyrights, theater copyrights. He came always with a woman because he was deaf, and so this woman helped him understanding what I said. And he came over and over for 2 or 3 months every week. until he got everything right about his copyrights and his testament and everything else. And then suddenly he stopped coming. And a month later, the lady came alone. And she said to me, I was taught by Mr. Layton to thank you. I said, thank you, where is he? And she said, well, you helped him putting his things the right way, writing his testament, so he committed suicide. He was shocked. And he wrote a nice letter telling that he had had a wonderful life, but he was almost 80. He felt that his life was not worth it anymore. His life had been so successful, so happy. He was so thankful, but he wanted to put an end to it. And I was really shocked. And I said, well, but what was about his testament? He said, everything went to his family, but the copyrights that you helped him so well. And I asked, who got the copyrights? And she started crying and said, me. So this was a moment when I realized, well, you can do your work well, and this may happen. So I have a very nice memory of William Layton, but I will never forget that at that time, helping him with my advice was what he needed to leave this earth in peace, apparently. So, well,
I'm sure not everybody has a story. I mean, it's quite a unique story, sort of very special, very poignant, and we won't share it around as legal advice. If you do your job well, your client will leave this earth, but at least they'll go happily with contracts, with will, testament, and contracts firmly in place. You know what's extraordinary. I'm going to ask you a question about how you stay in love with the law in a minute. But you know what's extraordinary is Joanna in London and Sarah in Indiana are amazing, because they keep turning up to these sessions, which is brilliant. We're delighted to have them. I think Helen, you may have joined a previous one as well. And every experienced lawyer who every one of our mentors has always said, you've got to work hard. You've got to make mistakes and learn from them. And then you've got to prepare, and you've got to work hard again. And I'm sure Joanna and Sarah kind of look at some point, one of the mentors is going to give us a shortcut, is going to give us that little piece of advice that we can take out of one of these sessions and really go, I'm going to change the way I do things, and that's going to help, me. I'm amazed by your resilience, you two, in that you haven't got depressed by the fact that every senior lawyer who's come along with a different perspective, is basically saying there are no shortcuts to building a fulfilling and a sort of a senior career in the law. So if you were going back to talk to your younger self, what pieces of advice would you give yourself? I mean, you talked about not burning the candle at both ends, not trying to run too fast and become too big and shiny a lawyer too quickly. And about having to make mistakes and also get supervision. So I guess if you're not getting supervision, you should go looking for it.
Yes, certainly. And this is something I very much encourage younger lawyers to demand from the bosses and at the law firms. I believe that is the right of every person who starts a profession, to be properly led, properly taught, properly taken care of. And that is something I when I look back, I realize, probably because of my own I don't know, my own ambition, but also because of the lack of responsibility of others who were my bosses at that time. I believe I did not get enough. And I think this should be really something older people provide younger people with. And if you don't have that, I guess, and I hope that that's not anybody's case, but if it happened to you, you must ask for it. That is a right you have. You have the right to make your own mistakes, but you must be allowed to make those mistakes at the right time. Otherwise, if you're exposed to a very strong sunlight when you're a small plant, you will burn. You will dry up, and that's not good. That's not good for anybody. So yes, when I look back, I would say no rush. I would say work hard, be honest, pay attention to relations. Don't like in sportsmanship. I think it's a very important topic to when you have counterparts, counter lawyers. There is a combat. There is a conflict. Somebody wins, somebody loses. Eventually, everybody wins a bit, everybody loses a bit. But this is nothing personal. And I very much treasure relations with colleagues I have had to work against in litigation, in negotiations. But I am very proud to say we are very good friends, and this is not very easy. This is not very easy, especially if you take matters personally. And if another thing I would say not to lose sight of is cases do not belong to you. Neither clients nor cases are yours. We are handling with other people's rights. We are handling other people's rights, other people's obligations, other people's problems. They do not belong to you. And for the good and for the bad. It means decisions must be taken by them. And this means when you're over, when your day is over and you stop working, you must find a way to forget about it. Otherwise, it can be terrible. There is always a question that comes from time to time, probably to all of you at some point. How is it possible for you, if you want to be a nice person, that you can't defend somebody who you know is guilty or has done the wrong thing? How can you bear that? And I believe this is one of the beauties of our profession. The lawyer is not the part. The problems, the rights and the obligations don't belong to us. So if you play by the rules, if you play fair, and you do it better, and you prevail and your client prevails, even your client was not precisely right or did not precisely the right thing, well, next time do it better. And otherwise it's like, I don't know, if you find yourself in the middle of the night in a dark street, and then you stumble, something's on the ground, and then you suddenly pick something up from the floor, it's a gun, and suddenly light flashes, the police is there, and there is a dead body on the ground, and you have the gun in your hand that was just shot. So you're brought to the police station, and there is a lawyer for you, and the lawyer says, don't worry, I will be impartial, and the law must prevail. So if you find yourself in that situation, I would say, please bring me another lawyer. I don't want you to be neutral. I don't want you to be impartial. I want you to defend me, to help me. And this is it. This is how it must be. And no matter you look guilty, you have a right to defense, to a proper defense. That person must do their job the best possible way, not faking evidence, not threatening anyone, but being skilled, hardworking, honest, true, reliable. And if by doing so justice is not achieved, then it is a failure of the system, or it's the beauty of the system. But it is nothing that you can blame the lawyer for. I have seen in my life many lawyers do what I call black magic. They achieve goals by using more than questionable tools or more than questionable paths. And I hate that. I've been asked by clients. I remember once it was an inheritance matter, and there were dozens of blank sheets of paper with the signature of the deceased person. And the client told me, "You write whatever is needed to be written there." And I have not seen that client anymore in my life, because I would never do such a thing. I would never allow me doing such a thing, because it does. I mean, I would feel so bad. I could have earned lots of money. That former client would have earned lots of money, but it would have been so sad. So provided you don't run into that, and you do your job in a way that you can feel satisfied with yourself, then whatever it happens, it's great. It's great.
So does that answer the question then? You've answered two questions in one. When I said, how have you stayed in love with the law?
I have stayed in love with the law because, you know what, Keith, when I was young, I studied science. My second option to go to school was aerospace engineering. And I decided to go to law school though. Yes, boom. I decided to go to law school though. And at the first time, I thought I was doing that because I strive for justice. Then I realized that it was not just that. It was because I also strive to serve. I have somehow, I can say, a vocation to serve. And law to me is nothing else but applied philosophy. So legal problems arise every time there are two more people together. We societas civius, where there are two or more persons, conflict arises and law is needed. To me, law is a way I serve. I am a member of my community. I serve others, and I help people's life to be better. And I'm very proud of it. So yes, I'm in love with law. I teach law, and law has also given me a very specific, special way of thinking and reasoning, and solving problems. Every time you probably realized already, we do work a lot for the entertainment industry, and there are some motion pictures you may have already seen. That where you can see my name in the credits, and well, I feel so good because part of me is in that movie too, part of my work, part of my person. When you help others to do good things, to do nice things, and you feel part of it, that really makes a difference to me. And sometimes it's a movie, sometimes we have worked in patents, in medicine patents for pharmaceuticals, that also has made us feel proud. Sometimes we have simply helped people to reach agreements, or we have litigated and achieved important results. And every time I see that, and part of me is in there, I feel really proud of it. And my clients' achievements, if I have taken part in that, they are partially my own achievements.
I was going to ask you a question about what you do in terms of education, but in fact, Roberto's just messaged me, and it would be nice to have a different questioner. So Roberto, you had a question for Santiago.
Yeah, I'm 56, and for that reason, and I've been working for 33 years, and for that reason, I'm very much interested in personal professional life balance. And this has much to do with the education of juniors, of young lawyers, and their independence. But education of the next generation lawyers implies that they leave their comfort zone. And I must be frank, I find it very, very difficult to have young lawyers leaving their comfort zone. So that trend, the normal trend, is to try to be protected, to be safe, not to take their own responsibilities, to have someone else looking at their writings, the deeds or contracts or whatever. And they would like to always be approved before the email, the contract, and the draft goes to the client. How can you cope with this issue? Maybe this is a typical Italian issue because Italians are very much stuck to their mother, and probably seniors become the new mother of juniors. And maybe Spanish people are more or less the same, but we are Southern Europeans in the end. But I'm really struggling with this issue because it's not easy to have or to make juniors more independent. How can you cope with this?
Roberto, that's such a great question. I have to say, yeah, we are very much like you, and this is something that also comes. I must say, well, I have 3 of my juniors here: Celia, Beatriz, and Manuel. And there is Helen, who is not a junior, although she's so young, but she has lots of experience. And I must say that it is also something that goes with the person. There are persons who are more open to leave their comfort zone. There are persons who don't like to get away and expand their comfort zone. So I believe, I mean, the way I personally do things is I don't know if I should be saying this in front of my juniors, but I will. I have a plan for every of them, for each of them, a different plan. I get to know them by working with them closely. And once I have spent enough time to know how they are, not just professionally, but as persons, so not just as lawyers, but also as persons, and I write a plan for each of them. I try to find where their weaknesses are, and but this is a long-term plan. This is not something that takes some months, not even a year. So there are different degrees of what I do with them. I spend lots of time with them. Sometimes I gather them together and have group discussions about 1 or 2 or 3 especially interesting cases, especially difficult cases. But I also do that personally with each of them. I know Manuel, Beatriz, and Celia could tell you how we have worked just with Manuel and me, Beatriz and me, Celia and me in cases where I really teach. And when I say I teach, it's like a formal lesson. I sit down and I explain legal theory. I explain everything about the case, and I force them to recall things that I know that they have learned long ago while studying at law school. So more and more with the time, when I feel it is the right moment, I delegate more of these cases in different stages.
I'm really worried because you've now given away all of your secrets. Actually, not all of them. The one thing that you haven't shared is the name change from Santiago Mediano Abogados to, I think, isn't it just going to be Yoda Abogados?
Maybe.
but I think to take the motherhood analogy, and I there's some mothers on the call, they're probably now looking at me with, what are you going to say now, Keith? But actually, the initial instinct is to protect, but essentially as mothers and fathers, we are preparing children to go out into the world and fly the nest. And it sounds as if that's what you're doing. So Roberto, maybe the motherhood analogy is not a bad one in terms of actually you start by protecting and then you gradually and it's difficult, loosening the ties until they go off, and the day they become independent, you're sort of going, but it's a good thing.
Yes. And some of them,
of course.
Yes, some of them you have to bark and to push and to say move.
Well, that's sons. They need to be pushed. They need to be pushed away from their mother.
Yes, that's right.
Santiago, I'm very conscious. I'm very, very conscious of the time. This has been enlightening and brilliant. At another time, Celia, Beatriz, and Manuel will catch up with you to get the other perspective on things.
Great.
But it's been, and what it's like being barked at. But it's been a fascinating insight. The Mentor Series does not disappoint. Roberto, we may bring you back at a later stage to hear about how your motherhood skills are. Santiago, the last word is to you.
Yeah. This of the motherhood, Roberto, and you mentioned, Keith. During the pandemics, another thing that I love is poetry. And during the pandemics, a fellow young poet, a friend of mine who was 25, lost his mother. And it was sad because he could not even say goodbye to her. And that was due to the COVID. And he was suddenly alone all by himself. And so I felt I had to write for him some words that I imagined his mother would have liked to tell him before she died. And if it's just 1 minute, if I can share them with you, because I think that's what I would say to my children, pushing them away, which is this. At the hour of my departure, I want to leave some thoughts with you. They have been my companions, and like me, I wish them to serve you. Of goods and money have just enough. Those who owe the least are the richest, not those who possess the most. Do not try to please everyone, yet do not ignore what others feel. Be honest when you speak, measure your words, and treasure your silences. But first and foremost, be true to yourself. Always look on the bright side of things, even the saddest of things. Sincere laughter and good humor are the best medicine for the soul. Seek with your fantasy beauty. Create it. Be beautiful. Love. Love yourself, for self-love is the measure of love for others, and love is the measure of all things. Love your body, those close to you, and the common home that is this earth. Do not renounce the spirit. Cultivate the mystery that inhabits the universe. Transcend the immediate. Thirst for the absolute. And remember, we are made of the space between the letters that form words. There, in the infinite, we shall meet again.